Hello and welcome back to our series around the Goldsmith indices of body symmetry, and we're coming on now to measure chest dimensions. So before we begin, we've done some work around the optimal start position and the adapted start position. Whether they can get the OSP or the ASP, you now know where you need to hold a person's legs to get their pelvis level. If it's OSP, 0, 0. If it's ASP, it might be 10 degrees, 15 degrees, 8 degrees, wherever it is, to whichever side to get a level pelvis. So the first thing, we cannot measure the chest unless we know we have a level pelvis. There we go. So we're assuming from now on we have a level pelvis. So let's take a quick look. So measuring critical chest dimensions, remember we are measuring depth, width of the chest at xiphoid process, and we are measuring from xiphoid process to lateral border. There we go. First thing about the pieces is make sure that you've got them put together correctly. So the blocks should look like this. They should make this little shape here at the front. If you find it difficult to get the blocks together when you're out and about, take a photograph so that you can come back to it and think, right, no, that's how it's supposed to be. Which sounds ridiculous. Believe me, I've been there when you've got the whole thing upside down and back to front. The bubble should be on top of the horizontal bar and the screws should be at the back. Okay, so you can see here, we've got the rulers all facing the assistant one, the advocate. Okay, so this person here is assistant 2. So this is what it should look like. And you can make it fun, particularly if you've got some skillful knitters around you. It's always nice to ask kids who they would like to have measure them, and we've got all sorts of different things. Okay, make sure that you are holding the pieces securely. You're going to put them over the top of and away from this person minimum 4 times. You absolutely need to hold underneath. Can you see underneath the horizontal bar so that these pieces can't just drop straight through once you've undone the screws at the back. This is the way that the chest piece should look once it's in place. You can turn it around. In the video, we explain that's a little bit of a nightmare for when you're then trying to read the numbers. It is possible. You know, it's not impossible, but it can be a little bit harder. So when you are finding the xiphoid process, I tend to do that with my index finger, unless I've got a child where we've surface marked when they're lying down. I do prefer to use my index finger to find. It's just quick. It's just the way that I'm used to doing it. But make sure that your 0 is directly above xiphoid process. So incorrect. Correct. And then when you're getting the pieces nice and snug and making sure that they're touching the chest, then you press them in at the bottom and not at the top. Okay, so we need to have 0 over the xiphoid process and both sides need to be touching the chest. And it sounds ridiculous, but always check. And then when you're measuring, we're looking at this part here. So that's the bit where you're going to measure the width. And in this case, it'll be 12.1 centimeters. And then when we measure the depth, we know that we were resting this piece on the person's chest at xiphoid process. So that's the part that we want to measure. So in this case, 13.6 centimeters. I'm just going to go backwards just to say, one of the things that you might find is if you've got somebody with a sulcus, then it may be that when you're resting the chest piece, it could be that there's a big gap between the horizontal bar and the xiphoid process. If there is, then measure, you know, it might be 2 centimeters, could be, you know, kind of, who knows, but measure and then you take it away from the depth at the side. Okay, so that will give you the depth at xiphoid process. So that could be if you've got a sulcus, and it could also be if you've got a rib flare and the rib is much higher on one side than the other, and you need to measure down. If I'm honest, usually I don't do that. It's quite unusual that there is somebody with a very measurable distance between, you know, kind of the horizontal bar and xiphoid process. And again, it comes back to that thing of balancing accuracy with getting the measure and, you know, within a reasonable time. So collecting the results, really straightforward if you're using measurepositionprotect.com. As you put the results into here, then it will churn out to your right-left ratio. So one is what we're looking for. 1 point something is clockwise rotation at the chest. 0 point something is anti-clockwise rotation at the chest. And then depth-width ratio, we're looking for 0.65 to 0.85. The lower the number, the flatter you are, the higher the number, the rounder you are. So we want to keep those chest dimensions within typical. Okay, so if you've got somebody that's becoming very compressed, we know we need to introduce decompression. If we've got somebody who is becoming rotated, we know we need to introduce derotation. So these numbers give us an idea of where the person's at and what we need to do in order to improve the situation. You can also obviously write those numbers down on paper and do your calculations afterwards. So for further advice and support, Simple Stuff works for free, unlimited CPD certified training for anybody who has an AMI. So it could be refresher courses, it could be that you've got new members of your team. Anything that you want us to do, then please do just get in touch. Myself and Anna Goldsmith, so I was previously a Goldsmith. So Anna and I do also offer private measurement and assessment services where we will come out, we will support you to measure the person and to develop the therapeutic plan afterwards. Born at the Right Time for all your CPD certified online training needs, and Clinical Excellence Online, which is an international panel of experts within their clinical field. And I'm one of those, I'm a member of that panel, and I provide coaching for paediatric therapists who are looking to use measurement of body symmetry, who are looking at really supporting their understanding of body shape and intervention in terms of postural care. Email me if you would like some support, training@simplestuffworks.co.uk. You can also phone the office on 01827 307 870 and I will be happy to help.
So now we come on to measure the dimensions of the chest. Remember, we're looking for the width of the chest from xiphoid process to lateral border on the right, and from xiphoid process to lateral border on the left, and then the overall depth of the chest at xiphoid process. So my job as the measurer is to hold the legs at the point where we know we have a level pelvis. We established that when we looked at whether Nell could achieve the start position. For Nell, it's 0. So my job is to hold the legs at 0. It could be for a child you're measuring, it's 5 degrees, 10 degrees, and in which direction. As the measurer, that is your job. Assistant 2 is then leading the chest measure. So making sure that they've got the pieces securely held, so they're not going to drop on anybody. The chest pieces are put in place. And remember, they are facing the advocate. So they are facing assistant 1. The next thing that will happen is Anna will establish where the xiphoid process is using her forefinger. She'll make sure that the horizontal bar is on the 0. She will then make sure that the chest pieces are nice and close, pressing against the chest. You'll notice with Nell that she's wearing a little vest top. If you are measuring kids and they've got clothing on, make sure that that clothing is down. Don't roll it up, otherwise it ends up exactly where you want to be placing your chest pieces. Now, Anna is going to tighten one side of the chest bar, and then she's going to ask Gemma to read off to the right and to the left. If you have any concerns about the advocate's ability to read those numbers off, there could be a language barrier, there could be a numeracy barrier, then it's absolutely fine for assistant 2 to come round and support that to be able to get through. The other thing is that you could have the rulers facing this direction, but please be aware then that assistant 2 ends up with their head you know, kind of around in the groin area, and it can all end up a little bit difficult for everybody. So once we have the right and left measure, Anna will then take away, not completely, but just loosen the side that is not tight, and she's able to lift the bar, and then she will be checking on the side that has been tightened what the depth is.